American sponsors are observing, and they were unprepared for this. The biggest tennis brands are rushing to react after a Filipino youngster just defied all expectations. This was not where Alex Eala was supposed to be. She wasn't meant to attract this much attention. However, one game altered everything in a sport where Western narratives and million-dollar endorsements predominate. Whether or not they are still paying attention is not the question. It's whether they're prepared for what lies ahead. The discussion never included Alex Eala. Not in Manhattan's boardrooms. Not during the Nike headquarters strategy discussions. Not in the glitzy tennis publications that foresaw the upcoming superstars. She was a talent known to those who watched junior circuits and a name whispered in specialized groups, but she was essentially unseen by the system that determines who receives the limelight in professional tennis. Eala was born in Manila and grew up in a nation with few tennis courts and a predominance of basketball, so her road was never going to be simple. There had never been a Grand Slam singles champion from the Philippines. There was no infrastructure. There was no funding. The route that players in Europe and America take for granted. Elite mize, media coverage that fosters mythology, and corporate sponsorships starting at age 12. For her, none of that existed. Eala, though, had another idea. She trained with the top players in Europe at the Rafael Nadal Academy in Spain. When everyone else didn't believe, her family did. Additionally, she won the US Open Junior title in 2022, which ought to have served as a warning to everyone watching. It wasn't only that she prevailed, it was also how. The poise, the bravery, and the capacity to win games under oppressive circumstances. The tennis industry did, however, move on. The traditional suspects were pursued by sponsors. Eastern European prospects with well-known last names, tall, strong Americans with Instagram followings. It had been decades since the marketing playbook was updated. Before she even wins a major, you create a brand around a young white player, preferably American and blonde. It is foreseeable. It's secure. It makes money. Eala didn't suit the description. She came from a market that tennis executives hardly recognized, was small, and was Southeast Asian. It was assumed that she would be a strong professional, possibly place in the top 50, win 1 or 2 minor titles, be respectable but unmarketable, and not be able to make a significant impact. They were about to lose everything because of that notion. Because something was developing while American sponsors were ignoring it. Filipinos were watching Eala's bouts in numbers that were comparable to prime-time television. Not only in Manila, but also in Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam, her social media mentions were increasing. The idea that one of their own could compete at the top level was awakening a whole area. The match that altered everything then arrived. But first, you must comprehend what was at risk. Because there was more than one player involved. This industry was worth billions of dollars. It was a second-round match at a WTA 500 event, and I realized it had been ignoring half the world. It shouldn't have mattered on paper. Eala faced a former top 20 player who was predicted to win in straight sets despite being ranked outside of the top 100. The game was supposed to take place on an outside court. In the US, there is no prime time slot and no significant broadcast coverage. However, an unforeseen event occurred. In a tiebreak, Eala prevailed in the first set. Then, early in the second, she broke serve. Additionally, something else was taking place thousands of miles away as the match went on, and she battled off break points and scored victories that astonished her opponents. Bars were crowded in Manila.
Parties to watch erupted.
Social media took off. For early round matches, the official WTA feed usually attracted a few thousand viewers. All of a sudden, nearly 200,000 people were watching live. Toleg, English, emojis, and Filipino flags were all mixed together in the comment box. In 2 sets, Eala won the match. Her jubilation was captured on video. Just a clenched fist and a quiet, determined expression. Nothing out of the ordinary. However, she transcended her role as a tennis player at that instant. She turned to become a symbol. The highlights were trending on Twitter in a matter of hours. Videos of her backhand victories on TikTok were going viral. Celebrities from the Philippines who had never tweeted about tennis were now doing so about Eala. A statement was issued by the Philippine President's office. It was more than sports news. This was pride in one's country. Additionally, inquiries began to be made in the US headquarters of the largest sports marketing companies worldwide. This girl, who is she? Why do some of the top 10 players receive lower audience numbers than those from Southeast Asia? Why were we unaware of this? At first, the panic was calm. There were a few emails and agent calls, but something profound was taking place behind closed doors. Executives in marketing were gathering information. Teams working on social media were examining engagement rates. Brand managers were examining demographic data that they had long disregarded. The figures were astounding. There are more than 100 million people in the Philippines alone. Over 600 million people live in Southeast Asia, and tennis viewership there has been continuously increasing. However, until today, no one had tried to develop a star who could capitalize on this. According to accounts, one sponsor was a well-known sportswear company that convened an emergency meeting. There was a straightforward question on the table. How could we have overlooked this? Eala wasn't merely attracting attention, after all. She was attracting the kind of attention that leads to market expansion, sales, and brand loyalty. Serena Williams received the kind of exposure that allowed Nike to build an empire. The kind of attention that made Naomi Osaka one of the world's most paid athletes. They had also disregarded her. The actual combat was only getting started, but the match was over. This is when things become sticky since motivations are called into question when money moves quickly. And Alex Eala was about to become the focus of a discussion that she had not requested. Within 72 hours, the rumors began. According to industry insiders, at least 3 significant brands have contacted Eala's management team. They haven't yet made formal proposals, but they have made inquiries, felt out the situation, and tested the waters. Nike was apparently rethinking after famously rejecting Eala 2 years prior. Suddenly, Wilson, her present racket sponsor, expressed interest in growing their collaboration. Gatorade, Rolex, and even high-end companies that hardly ever deal with tennis, unless you're in the top 5, were circling. However, the hiring procedure wasn't flawless. It was a scramble. The tone of the discussions taking place behind closed doors was exposed by leaked internal communications from one brand, which were widely publicized but never formally confirmed. Marketing teams were being asked to explain why they hadn't recognized Alice earlier. The challenge of estimating her market value in Southeast Asia fell to data analysts. Contract structures that could be completed quickly were being reviewed by legal teams. The tone was summed up in one email, purportedly from a senior marketing director. "We cannot afford to be late once more." The illusion was obvious. Osaka, Naomi. Osaka wasn't a top sponsor when she won the 2018 US Open. She made some agreements, but they weren't nearly as good as she deserved. Brands didn't recognize what they had for months. A multiracial, multilingual superstar with the potential to rule both the Japanese and American marketplaces. Her asking price had increased dramatically by the time they relocated. The industry was afraid of repeating the lesson they had learned the hard way with Eala. However, there was an issue. At least not yet. The Alice team had no interest in engaging in a bidding battle. They were looking for something more meaningful than a quick cash grab. They desired a collaboration that honored her identity, her narrative, and her ties to the Philippines. She was not to be a diversity checkbox, according to them. They wanted her to represent something genuine. The tension started there. Because despite all of the enthusiasm and unexpected attention, there was a hint of cynicism in the social media discourse. Fans began posing awkward queries. Why right now? When she was winning junior crowns, why did these businesses not take notice? When she was having trouble in the qualifying rounds without any assistance, why didn't they care? Comment sections began to use the term diversity play. Sponsors were accused by critics of being opportunistic and of following a trend without making a sincere investment. Some noted that Alice's rapid prominence only occurred once she's shown her ability to make money, and that her value was determined by viewership figures rather than potential or skill. Others stood up for the brands. This is how companies operate. They contended that sponsors put money where it will pay off. Opportunity was generated by Alice's accomplishment. It's not exploitation. That's capitalism. Alex Eala remained silent during the heated conversation. Her squad, however, did not. Furthermore, it was evident from their subsequent remarks that this was more than just endorsements. Power and who gets to select where it goes were at the center of this. A statement was issued by Eala's manager. Although it was professionally written and well-crafted, the message was clear. Alex has always prioritized her game over publicity. We appreciate the help she's getting, but we're also looking for collaborations that fit with her community and ideals. This isn't about seizing an opportunity. Building something sustainable is the goal.
It was a shot across the bow.
It served as a reminder that Aya's crew was aware of the nature of the game. They were aware that the sponsors had more interests than just her. They refused to allow her to be used because they were interested in the market she represented. However, the criticism persisted. If anything, it became more intense. You had supporters who were defensive of Eala on one side. She was viewed by them as a representation of minority athletes receiving attention at last. They opposed the commercialization of her story. They didn't want her to be used as a commercial ploy. Industry experts, on the other hand, contended that this response was foolish. Sports are a business. It has always been, they claimed. Isn't it a wonderful thing if Aya's ascent opens doors for other Southeast Asian players and compels sponsors to make investments in places they had previously overlooked? That is progress, isn't it? Op-eds, podcasts, and think pieces were all influenced by the controversy. Aya was commended by some authors for maintaining her composure. Her team was chastised by some for being overly cautious and possibly leaving money on the table. Some claimed that the entire discussion was performative and that while everyone was discussing representation and justice, no one was genuinely altering the institutions that first caused the issue. A former player in the top 10 then offered their opinion. "I think it's great that Alex is getting attention, but let's be honest," she stated in an interview. She would have made similar deals years ago if she had a different appearance or were from a different nation. All you need to know about this sport is that sponsors are only now interested. The quotation gained popularity. Although it was presented as a show of togetherness, it also brought up the most awkward aspect of the discussion again. Tennis has long struggled with diversity, and investing money in a single breakthrough star won't solve the issue. Although I had yet to make a public statement, people close to her claimed that she was worn out by the commotion. She had no desire to be a symbol. She was not interested in being a case study. All she wanted to do was play tennis. But because her success had revealed a weakness in the industry, the world was not going to allow her. Everyone was now compelled to take a side, including sponsors, spectators, the media, and other players. However, this is something no one had yet to discuss. The true change was occurring outside of boardrooms as well. It was taking place on the ground. It was also larger than anyone had anticipated. Something more subdued, but equally important was taking place while the online debates raged. In the Philippines, tennis clubs reported record enrollment. Children were enrolling in classes even if they had never used a racket. Schools were showing Eala's matches. Billboards featured her image. However, it wasn't limited to the Philippines. Tennis was suddenly more popular than it had ever been in Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and other parts of Southeast Asia. Additionally, sponsors were at last taking notice of the facts that they had disregarded for years. One of the world's fastest-growing sports markets is found in the Asia-Pacific area. Tennis has been progressively improving, but badminton and table tennis have always been the most popular. The issue was that Western companies never bothered to develop celebrities who could relate to that demographic. They believed that Asian supporters would just cheer on the victor. They didn't believe that representation was important. Eala disproved them. It was obvious to draw comparisons to Naomi Osaka. Osaka had a profound effect on Japanese tennis. She was an inspiration to more than one generation. She significantly altered the way the sport was promoted in Japan. Sponsors understand the importance of visibility. No amount of advertising can match the connection made when you encounter someone who looks like you, speaks your language, and embodies your culture. For Southeast Asia, Eala was doing the same thing. However, the risks were considerably higher because Southeast Asia remained completely unexplored, in contrast to Japan, which already had corporate investment and tennis infrastructure. There was more than one nation with potential. It was a whole area, and American sponsors were finally realizing the implications. For many years, Nike controlled the Asian market, mostly through soccer and basketball. Tennis was an afterthought. According to internal forecasts, signing Eala might lead to long-term benefits like partnerships, retail expansion, and brand loyalty. Wilson could already see it. Eala's racket model sales in the